Because most black males are athletic entertainers, you know what I mean, dancing, sports, and things of that nature. But how do we begin to translate those gifts when they begin to be transformative and impact and change your life? That's where the spiritual piece come in. That's where the spiritual piece come in, Santos. That's why spirituality means so much to the black culture. Sports has that power. Nelson Mandela really quoted the thing when he said, I want to give credit to him. He said, sports has the power to do what a church will never be able to accomplish. And so sports has that power and influence. Running has that. And I've always used running and sports and fitness as a way to build community. But if we're going to continue to maintain and build a relationship, there still has to be another step. And that step will have to go into our paradigms, our upbringing, our cultures, and our differences in the level that we're open and acceptable to those differences. You know what I mean? So then it comes back to a point, is our commonality and love for running strong enough to keep us together?
That is Dr. Joseph Spears, an endurance fitness enthusiast, associate professor of sports management at the Bowie State University, and he even pastors a church. And I am your host, Santosh Shiva. Welcome to another episode of RunYogi Diaries. Today is a special episode because it coincides with the birth celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi. I thought it would be appropriate to have an uncomfortable but an important conversation on this day. Gandhi inspired an entire people to fight for truth. I was one of those people. And he did that from a place of higher consciousness, in my opinion. His humanity wasn't perfect, and he never claimed to be a perfect human. But that's what is inspiring, personally for me, because he was on a life's quest to that higher levels of consciousness. If you're like me, these are confusing times, and I'm not comfortable to take sides. I think as people, we want the same things. Yet it seems otherwise when you see the news. I'd like to hypothesize that intentional conversations can lead to greater mutual understanding, and we can build stronger societies. So I reached to Dr. Spears in that context to understand, to learn what is the Black experience. Because if you're like me, I have no idea. So in this podcast, we talk about his personal journey in life and fitness, of course, his rendezvous with spirituality, what it means to be a Black man in America, and his vision for a stronger society through spirituality and fitness. Let's dig in. Good morning, Dr. Spears, or should I call you Joe or Joseph Spears or Dr. Spears? Good morning.
Dr. Spears, man, whatever's good for you, man. Whatever's good for you, friend.
Okay, Dr. Spears sounds good. Dr. Spears sounds good. So welcome to the show, Dr. Spears. Welcome to RunYogi Diaries. I really appreciate you taking the time out and being on this conversation. So without further ado, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and then we'll dig in.
Well, I'm going to tell you, man, I'm excited about our connection, Santos. You know, I think the way we connected is, I think what's needed in the times that we're living in now. Mm-hmm. You know, to be able to cross those cultural lines, those racial lines, those lines that have separated us for so many decades.
Yeah.
And man, I think you've done a wonderful job in doing it. I really feel a good sense of synergy, you know, about the relationship, the work you're doing there in Houston with running, and just my passion as it relates to the impact of fitness, physical fitness, and its influence in terms of life daily journey. So, man, I appreciate the platform you set here. for your community, man. I look forward to, us dialoguing today about that. I'm here in Brandywine, Maryland, which is just right outside of the nation's capital. And my wife and two wonderful children, we live here in this city. And she's lived in Houston, Texas, and you're part of the country. She taught school there, public school there. So we're excited about just being in the area. My craft is I'm a full-time associate professor at Bowie State University in the College of Education. And my area of interest is sport management. And we also pastor a church here in Prince George's County. So sports and fitness and ministry is my angle and influence. So we're just excited, man, to share with you today, man, and whatever's in state for us, we're looking forward to it. Yep. Absolutely.
No, that's great. And I'm so glad I connected with you. And, for the listeners here, I found Dr. Spears on Facebook in a common group that we are part of, which is to do with running. And I was looking to making a friend in the Black community. I don't have Black friends. Full transparency. I don't have Black friends. And I'm an immigrant in this country. I work in the tech industry and I don't see many Black people in the tech industry. So we don't get to make friends. So I was watching the show by Emmanuel Akko, who's a NFL player, and he's been doing some talks. And he said, if you want to make a difference, reach out to a person in the Black community and make a friend. I said, okay, let me start with someone who has a common interest. And fitness was the perfect space to find a common interest. And that's how I found Dr. Spears. And then I figured out that you're also a pastor and there's a spiritual side of you. And that's even more fascinating. And I said, hey, this is a fantastic conversation to have. And that's kind of a quick background. So without further ado, I do want to, dig into your personal journey in fitness. And, you've done great in life. Last time we spoke, you talked about how running and fitness has really been an anchor for that. So I want to dig into that and talk about that.
Yeah, man. I think it's unique. Running and fitness is definitely a part of it's almost like prayer, because I gotta have it. Not to the extent where it becomes as compulsive as some abusive devices or elements are. Mm-hmm. But running has been a part of my life journey in fitness as a way of running myself from drug addiction, alcoholism, and things of that nature. Been able to allow me to have a solid perspective as it relates to my path and what the future holds, and to give me a balance as it relates to just life in its the verbalness of life, because you experience all that in running and fitness and physical activity, ups and downs, good days, bad days, and then most successful athletes or people who are involved in the fitness can agree that not every day you wake up that you want to, participate in your routine activity. And life also deals as that same hand. You have good days and you have bad days. You're participating in sports and physical activities. There's still limitations in terms of your ability to perform, limits and boundaries. In life, you have those same concerns where you're limited in certain areas for whatever reason. So that compels you, man, to want to go to another level, to seek something else beyond what's on the physical level, on the lowest level. What you can produce in terms of what you're physically seeing, how you're thinking based on your own level of intellectualism, your emotions, your own will, and what you're currently feeling. It has to be something else. So I think sports and physical activity and fitness provides a more wider perspective about who you are as a human being and the way you see life. Just that whole mindset and that whole perspective begin to shape my future, my thinking as relates to, now I didn't think this way initially when I was out getting loaded, when I was getting high and living an abusive life. You know what I mean? Doing what typical African-American brothers do, you know?
What age was this? How old were you when you
Man,
realized?
I tell you, I started as probably as far back as I can remember, as it relates to, I can remember as a juvenile, just when my mom would put me on the bus to go to school, I would get on the bus. You know, she would have to whoop me to get on the bus. I would get on the bus, but when I would get to the high school, I would get off the bus. Instead of going into the building, I would go and run into the local town and just kind of hang out all day. So I would say it started back as far as middle school age, just that activity and hanging out in the streets and getting involved into, you know, with hustlers and people out there that was, you know, at that level. So it started as far as back as that far. And that's the unique thing about it, Santos, is that, you know, when I look at where I'm at today as it relates to just having this whole new revelation that God has given me as it relates to spirit, soul, and body, that didn't just come overnight. That came over my entire life, because this perspective that I'm sharing with you now, you know, I didn't have that insight and during those earlier years in middle school. But, you know, the really what sealed the deal and changed the game is the fact that something was covering me and protecting me, knowing that this is the place where I was destined to be here, you know, sitting before you now with a better understanding as it relates to life's journey in spirit, soul, and body, and its influence and so forth. So that right there indicates that there is a higher power that watches over us when we're not even watching over ourselves. Even when we're in the midst of our mess, you know, even when we're in the midst of our mess, whatever we're involved into, we're still in his presence. You know what I mean? We may not be experiencing his presence to his fullest potential, but he never leaves us and he never forsakes us, man. And that's humbling.
So at what point did you realize this? So, you know, you were going down a path, which at some point you realized that path is a destructive path for you personally. At what point was there an incident? What happened? How did you suddenly change? What was the trigger?
I'm gonna tell you something, man. My trigger was one night. I was, and this was years after I had been given juvenile life because I got into a point, you know, I was born in St. Mary's County. So it had gotten to a point where I was suspended from school a lot. So the school board and authorities began to investigate my family life, and they saw my parents were separated. So that's when the court system got involved. And then they saw me missing school begin to translate into criminal activity. And then that's when the court system got involved. And then they just said, hey, man, we just gonna, you know, my mom lived in one place, my dad lived in another place. I got involved in the middle and got involved, you know, hanging in the streets with the brothers that were older than me. And then, so that's when I received juvenile life and went to really every juvenile institution in the state of Maryland. So it was, that still wasn't enough, because when I got to become an adult, over 18, right? I'm going to tell you something. I still kind of participated in that activity because I thought I was a whole lot more wiser and older and wouldn't make those same mistakes I made when I was younger, that I could still, win in hustling in the streets. So, but there was one time, man, where I was in a closet and I was in this house. I can remember as clear as day. It was in Washington, D.C. And I was in this house, man, in this closet. And I gotten into the closet because some individuals wanted to come in and raid the house. And I was watching the house for a drug dealer who was gone to Ohio. And somebody must have told someone in the neighborhood that he was gone. And so when they came in the house, man, I knew they were coming because they was kicking through the back door. And I went downstairs and said, hey, man, what's going on? They're like, man, we coming in here. So I'm like, oh, my God. So I run to go get the closet. In that closet is when I had my awakening moment. And I said, man, hey, look, if I don't get out of this, man, I'm going to die. I'm going to die, or I'm going to end up in prison the rest of my life, or, in a drug rehab. And back then, Santos, my life was so out of order, was that it wasn't nothing for my family not to see me for about 3 months. 3 months, we didn't see him, that's fine. So I said, hey, man, these guys can kill me, right? This is what I'm thinking in my mind, in the closet. These guys can kill me. Nobody will never know for at least another couple months, So that was the moment, man, in that I realized that I have to do something else, And so that was really my epiphany moment, of change, and to begin to, move into a better direction. Because God even protected me that night, because I could have been gone. That night he was there with me in that closet.
Wow, amazing. I mean, I can almost imagine that little boy in that room, stuck there. It must have been pretty lonely and scary, right? And I think just for us to get that little boy, and I know a lot of boys out there who are probably dealing with similar challenge, right? And for you to have realized it and then built your life after that is just amazing. It's amazing. Oh, that's amazing. So then what happened? And what did you do? So at what point did running enter your life? Was it around that time or was it later?
Well, I'm going to tell you something, man. I was always running. Even when I was in that lifestyle, I was running. But I began to gain a better perspective. I think that life and that background set the stage for me. It really set the stage for me. And I'm going to tell you something, Santos. That's the background of most black men. Now, you may have isolated cases, but on the majority, what I just shared with you is almost the experience with some variations of most black men. And those type of experiences normally shape our future. And I was just fortunate enough to be, to be able to, because most black males are athletic entertainers, you know what I mean, dancing, sports, and things of that nature. But how do we begin to translate those gifts, when they begin to be transformative and impact and change your life? That's where the spiritual piece come in. Santos. That's why spirituality means so much to the black culture. Because when we look at where we came from, if I just gave you an overview of my past, because I wanted to set the foundation there. But if you talk to most black males, that's the example, that's the case of the black culture in most cases. The disadvantage, the systematic racism that we had to deal with. And then when you begin to look at it, those are some, how do we overcome those things? That's where we have to tap that higher power, to begin to, look at ways to overcome where our education, our economic status, and the color of our skin will no longer make a difference. And that's where our relationship with a higher power comes in. For me, it was my relationship with Jesus. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of people like to run from that name, but I can't, given, you know, I understand Master Farad Muhammad and other religions, but I can't interpret this transformative experience that I've had with any other religion. But I don't put down any other religion. That's my experience. I can give interpretation of that. You know, I'm able to sit down like yourself, you know, the relationship we have, you know what I mean? And we're cultivating. The Minister Louis Farrakhan is one of my, really, man, someone that I admire greatly, but I'm not a Muslim. But I can sit and listen to his speech. It just is, you know, in his words. But I know the difference. It wasn't Master Farad Muhammad who got me up out of that closet. It was Jesus for me when I was in that closet that I experienced to you. And it was, you know, that experience that I had. So at this point, as I'm a whole lot more mature now, is that I'm able to deal with people from different religions and different perspectives without being critical. Mm-hmm. Because I understand and that everybody needs to be afforded the right to have an experience, for themselves and to give their own interpretation. So that's just, that's the piece there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, I think for all of us, right, in no matter what background we come from, the human experience is common. And when you are in a situation which is challenging, when you're down, you're looking for the one thread or one piece of hope that you can hang on to, from where you can build. And in your case, you found Jesus. I mean, that worked for you, and that's great, right? And that's a great point you're making there. And as someone who, I didn't grow up here. I moved in the United States about 20 years back. I was an adult. I grew up in India, and of course, the exposure to American culture was largely through Hollywood, right? You get to see Hollywood and pop music were the two big soft power that America had in countries like India, where I grew up. And I grew up with some very cool Black people that we relate to, and Black is always considered to be cool. And so, you think about Denzel Washington or Eddie Murphy, or Michael Jordan or, Will Smith, Morgan Freeman, Barack Obama, all cool people. No one's going to say that these are cool individuals that we all grew up with. And when I came to America, I found a very different, environment.
Oh yeah, I think when you that's been the experience in the history of the culture, of this culture, as it relates to how, viewing Black people and, they, as entertainers, from a television perspective. Mm-hmm. And then they assume that, that population of Blacks represent the Black culture. Mm-hmm. And then in reality, when they see stories such as the one that I've shared with you about my own life, mm-hmm. it becomes like a shock to them. And they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with it. So that's where, for me, man, the point comes in, because even in the church, I tell you, it was a shock for me when I went to Alabama. My wife and I, we pastored a church in Alabama, in the state of Alabama, very conservative part of the country. And I'm thinking, okay, there are pastors, a group of pastors. I was the only Black pastor in that group. We were in a small town. I'm not going to mention the town. Small town in the southern part of the state, near Florida, near the Florida border. And I can remember I joined the pastoral group, for men to be accountable to one another. So I was the only black pastor and probably 7 other white pastors. And so I had a couple of experiences there. I asked the pastor to come and come like you invited me to your platform. I asked the guy to come and preach my anniversary service. And he didn't answer me immediately. He said, let me check my calendar. But he was checking his calendar for about 3 weeks. And after about 3 weeks, I pulled him to the side and he just told me, he said, look, Doc, let me tell you, man, I can't do it. Because if I came to your church, man, my deacons will run me out of here, man, my family and I. You know, my wife works in the school system. We're from Ohio. My children in the school system. I'm not ready to uproot right now. So I'm saying that to say, even within the church, there's a certain perception that people of other races have on black people that are within the body of Christ. It doesn't represent Jesus itself, but you know, that privilege is still there. And that's been a part of our history for so long. I got them. I got friends of mine right now that are of a different race, that are white, you know, but they protect their privilege that they've held for so many years. So that's where, for me, my whole push as a human being is to get people to have a heart experience. If God changes your heart, man, it'll change your whole perspective, man. Right. It'll change your whole perspective. And that's what I like about you, Santos, man. I can say that, man, you know, by you reaching out like that, man, to me, I could have took it a number of different ways, because, you know, people got to, you know, I've had men try to reach out to me and try to hit on me, you know what I mean? So, you know, I could have gotten offended, and, but you got to be able to move beyond that. You know, it's not my thing, and move and look at the heart of a person. Yeah. So I respect this, man, you know, this relationship and, you know, this effort in moving towards us making a difference in the world, because I believe that if a person's heart is changed, their whole life is going to change. I could easily, man, have hatred for white folks, all that I've experienced and gone through. I could really be out here, man, fighting and hate every person that's not black because of some of the stuff that I've had to suffer under, and my people, my family, that are still in the conditions of America, in our community. But I know it's a heart issue, man. That's what I know it is. It's a heart issue. It's just that white folks have been in that position for so long. They've been the leaders in dictating that, but it's not just, I think if God changes their heart like he changed mine, it'll change their whole perspective. And it's unfortunate that what a lot of white folks and black folks do is they fit God, their relationship with Jesus, into their accolades. They tag him on because it sounds good or look good, and so forth.
Yeah. So athletics, right? Now, how can athletics and running, especially running, I think, I see that outside this whole conversation of just racism and discrimination, I would just use the word discrimination as a general term. And racism is a form of discrimination in a way, right? Now, when you go out running, right, when you run with friends, or when you're in an activity that's that gives joy to all of us, I see there is a possibility that people are, looking beyond discrimination. It's, hey, you're a runner, I'm a runner. We love running. It gives us happiness. Let's go hang out. Let's go have a beer. Let's go have dinner. Let's have breakfast. Let's have running together. So the whole community comes together, and I've seen that it brings people together. So do you use running and athletics as a form of kind of bringing that community up and together overall?
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, absolutely, brother. That's been my main thing. When I graduated from seminary, from Virginia Union University in Richmond, I got my Master's of Divinity down there. It was in 2000. And then we decided I wanted to go to work on a doctorate in pastoral studies. The Lord redirected me. Instead, I started working on a doctorate in education with an emphasis in sport management, because I see the power in sport. Sport can do what no church would ever accomplish. If you put on, let me give you a case in point. The University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa and Auburn University, every year when they have a football game, man, I'm talking about, man, they will kill you over a football game. They bring people together, whether it's on collegiate, recreational, community sports, high school sports, professional sports. People come together just around that sport. People from all walks of life, all gender, all ethnicity. You know what I mean? Sports has that power. Nelson Mandela really quoted the thing when he said, I want to give credit to him. He said, sports has the power to do what a church will never be able to accomplish. And so sports has that power and influence. Running has that. And I've always used running and sports and fitness as a way to build community and relationships. But what I found out, man, that is true what you're saying. Because my dissertation, where I looked at 240 churches in the state of Alabama, and I looked at how they were using sports to influence community relationships, finances, membership, relationships, and things of that nature. That was what you said is a good point. Sports do bring people together. Okay, like you and I now. I can bring people together, and I'm just saying based out of my experience as well, when we come together, we're attracted on that physical level because that's the commonality. Because we both love running and we both love physical fitness and sports, right? But there can be a line of separation, Santos, and that line of separation can come when we come together based out of the sport. But if we're going to continue to maintain and build a relationship, there still has to be another step. Mm-hmm. And that step will have to go into our paradigms, our upbringing, our cultures, and our differences in the level that we're open and acceptable to those differences. You know what I mean? So then it comes back to a point, is our commonality and love for running strong enough to keep us together? Mm-hmm. To be able to make a difference? You see what I'm saying? And in most cases, it's not. So that's why we need to bring in the spiritual piece. So running now and sports now just serves as a conduit and a bridge to something else more that has more stability, that has more resilience, that has more perseverance, which is the Spirit of God. So that's where the spiritual part of your being comes into play. So you got spirit, soul, and body. So you got the physical aspect of the connection, because let me give you a case in point. Let me give you a case in point. Look at the NFL. Look at any sport. You tell me any sport. I'm just going to use the NFL for example. Mm-hmm. There's a commonality. Them guys on the football field, they come together because why? They're athletes. They're probably the best and the strongest and fastest athletes in the world. So they come together. And they come together with administrators who can help facilitate and perfect their talent, coaches, but they're still not unified. Look at the Colin Kaepernick situation. You know what I mean? And they're still not on one accord. There's still not equity and equality among the NFL in this athletes and administration. You know what I mean? When you look at the ownership of the NFL, so the commonality is that, hey, okay, this guy can run fast. We want him on our team, and we're going to pay the resources to get him on the team. Now, the commonality is that they are, there, but there still has to be a higher power that the lower level has to be able to submit to in order to benefit what that relationship was intended to benefit from. And my thing is the spiritual part, because when you look at it, Santos, in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 7, for people, I've looked at other places when we look at creation. If I, look at the word, it says Genesis 2:7 says, God formed man from the dust of the ground. That represents his physical body. And then he breathed into his nostrils. Breath is nishama in Hebrew, in pneuma, in the Greek, which means spirit. So God breathed into him a spirit, and then man became a living soul. Okay, so that's a three-part being: spirit, soul, body. And then, so you got those three-part areas. So we see the separation of the spiritual part is during the fall in chapters 5 and 6. When God said, the moment you eat of the tree, that you shall surely die. And then we know that did happen. So separation did take place. But death was not physical because Adam lived 130 years before he died. So he lived 130 years after after he disobeyed the Lord. So in the eyes of spirituality, death is not physical, death is spiritual. So now if you track that all the way back, man lives out of two levels that does not have a relationship with God. They're functioning from the physical level and the soulless level. Those two realms is what most people function from. You know, the commonality of how I look, how fast I run, how I feel, my educational level. But when you want to really, that has its place and it produces. But then there's something else that's missing. And you think I'm kidding, man. You can look at some of the greatest athletes, some of the greatest entertainers. They still wind up somewhere in a closet with a needle in their arm and got all the wealth and all the resources in the world. You got preachers and pastors the same way, you know, fall short in relationships, you know, and things of that nature. So what really substantiates a person's life is living life on the highest plane. That's the spiritual piece. So I said that to say, in response to your question, though I use sport, and sport has its role, the challenge is being able to, you know, to get people to in touch and to connect with the spiritual aspect of their life. That's what's going to bring stability. And I'm going to say this and back off, because I think in order for us to have a sustainable life, there has to be death. Because life is just full of so many warfares and challenges. Why do you think we have to go through all of the warfare and challenges that we go through? You know, there's warfare on every level, whether you're married, you're single, you're working, no matter where you are, you're going to have to deal with these warfares. And the answer to warfare was life, a sacrificial life. Somebody has to die. So the thing of it is, in Christianity, the death has already taken place, which was Jesus. He died to give us a right to have authority over those influences that are trying to destroy us in the earth. So the only way that we're protected and covered is that we have to live life on the highest plane with him. That's the only way we're going to be able to overcome what we face now as human beings. You won't be without those challenges. They may hit you, but they won't penetrate you because, you know, we're living life based on the spiritual aspect of that experience. So that's that piece.
But that makes sense. So did you have someone who kind of, when you were in that closet, scared and confused, was there someone who, like a person in your life who showed you this path, or did you just discover it yourself?
Earlier, and that's what really helps me to stay balanced, because when I was in a juvenile institution in Baltimore, there was a white gentleman who was a physician assistant at Baltimore County General Hospital. He used to come and do Bible studies at the group home, and I became his student. You know, he would come to hold Bible study. Nobody would come except me. You know, a few of the brothers would just come to get out of the room, but I would come, and then we built a relationship. So he convinced the superintendent of that institution to let me come and spend the weekends with his family. So I would come and go to church with them. They was Pentecostals, man, white Pentecostals. So I had a chance to see a different perspective. That gentleman began to help mold my spirituality. Later, I went on to try to look to other church leaders, bishops. In the conflict that you have there is most church leaders and pastors, and you may have an isolated case, but on the majority, a lot of them have sort of like a ward over a person. You know what I mean? They want to, if they want to mentor you, they want to try to brainwash you, and for lack of words, to kind of think like them, you know, in the religious laws and preferences and things of that nature. Now you have some, you may have isolated cases, but on the majority. So a lot of people, young people who are looking for change, run from the church and run from church leaders because of the warding over them and the feeling of that. People don't want to experience that, to be able to, I think, let people be. It's like a professional fighter. You can't, you got to let folks utilize their own style and perfect them where they are versus trying to create them to what you think that they should be. And if they don't do that, then they're no good, or they're not saved and things of that nature. Right. So you got to be real strategic as you build relationships and connect with people and allowing people into your circle.
Yeah, no, you make some very powerful points, especially about, relationships at different levels, one being, common interest, right? And then kind of the relationship becomes sustainable when you really connect at a higher plane, at a higher level, when there's a complete acceptance of the whole package of, when, everybody is a package, right? And so that makes sense. And, your point about higher levels of consciousness. Now, I'm not a very religious person, okay? And my religion is very different. I was born a Hindu, and Hinduism is a religion with multiple paths to consciousness, multiple paths to what you want to call it God, Supreme Being. You can use whatever language that suits one's personal path. So there are multiple paths that Hinduism has. One of them is what we call as Bhakti Yoga, which is devotion to God, right? Like Bhakti is devotion, love. So that's one path. And when I hear people, real genuine Christians, and especially like what you're saying, it's your love for Jesus. That's a path that you follow. But there are other paths, there's Jnana Yoga, which is a path of knowledge for higher consciousness, and there is Karma Yoga, which is path of work. You can also reach higher levels of consciousness through your work, and you can hear that in a lot of the Zen philosophies, where Zen master would say, even if you're cooking with complete attention, you experience higher levels of consciousness. Something as simple as gardening or cooking. So I completely relate to what you're saying, and Christianity is very much there in India. So I have a lot of Christian friends, so I respect that. And my point is, as long as it empowers you, hey, embrace it, right? And whatever you say makes a lot of sense, because it's also not about being at a lower plane. It's about taking it to the next level. And spirituality is I wouldn't even say it's a powerful tool. It's beyond that. You don't use spirituality. Spirituality uses you in a way, right? In a sense, the moment you come in, then it's the ego trip.
Yeah. You're right about it. You're right. Great
points. And, I read your book, and one of the things you talk about is, the idea of death in the context of personal transformation, right? And you talk about how unless something dies, the old in you dies. And that's the way I interpreted that part of what's written in the book is, unless something in you dies, the old in you dies, you cannot embrace the higher levels, right? And that was very powerful because I don't think we normally think like that. Like, yeah, you know what, I want to get better, but I will keep my past intact and I'll add some more on top of it. But the old still going to run the show. Unless you get rid of that, how are you going to go to the next plane?
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And that portion is written in the book there, and you interpret it well. I saw a quote somewhere the last few days. Somebody quoted saying, "You got to give up your old life in exchange for your new life." So it's kind of that way. I would never have been able to Santos. I would never have been able to reach this spot had I continued to use drugs. Cocaine, marijuana, alcoholism, sexual abuse. If I'd continued to participate in that lifestyle, I wouldn't have been able to make it. So for me, I attended the NA meetings, AA meetings, you know, and a lot of other things, you know, and I wasn't using the drugs, right? But I still had the addict's behavior, you know what I mean? The behavior, the symptoms of someone that was using.
Yeah.
So that's the frightening thing. So that's where total surrender has to come in. So to me, you know, in order to, you know, the thing is, I want to pursue something that's making a difference, you know, that's making a difference. Because if it's not changing my life, man, I know where all the drugs are, right? I know where all the prostitutes are, you know what I mean? And I know where trouble is. So if my relationship with that I'm on now, this journey I'm on now is not sustaining me, I'll do something stupid, man. I'll mess up everything that I got, man. So, and I encourage other people to be involved in seeking, you know, from that level. God has a unique gift in each and every one of us, man. That's what makes him so awesome. Because each and every one of us, man, there's a unique anointing that's on our life. Mine's, I'm trying and I'm attempting to make it clear. You have one, Santos. You know what I mean? What you're doing now. And now I just think the challenge is at this point is how do we, you know, be able to take this and connect this to a source that has the wherewithal and the ability to catapult us to its ultimate destiny. Absolutely. And we want to make sure that we're on that journey and that we're involved into relationships that can contribute and support that. And that our God represents that level of resource, that has that type of power to take a drug addict like myself and pull him up out of the closet where there were gunmen in the house and save his life. You know what I mean? So if knowledge cannot provide that level of outcome, I don't want that kind of knowledge. I want to be, you know, on the track that will. So that gives me the confidence. That gives me confidence. Man, I think this is a good time when you think about the pandemic we're in, the COVID, and everything that's going on in the world, that we can have more of these type of discussions, these kind of relationships, people like yourself and people like the individuals who are on and folks who will be watching this recording, that we can take this pandemic and make this the most influential experience that we've ever had in our life in 2020. That we can reconcile our differences and that we can, I believe, Santos, I'm going to tell you something, man. I'm crazy enough to believe that if we do it, if we use this season to do that, that our God, or whatever you want him to be, for me is Jesus, for you is whatever it is, that will provide every resource you need in order to reconcile the nation, this country that we live in. And we can do it one community at a time, one person at a time, one life at a time. You know.
Good. So I think we covered some very powerful ideas. And I think the bottom line is really what I'm taking away is relationships get built not at a surface level, but at a higher level. And your access to that higher level could be different. You know, you've chosen a certain path to that, reaching the higher levels. And all of us have an obligation in a way to reach those higher levels.
Well, my brother, I'm going to tell you, man, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you, man. And I'm going to tell you, it's my desire that this relationship will grow into what I believe God has destined for it to be. I really honor and respect your tenacity in leading the RunYogi group there in Texas. And when the weather gets better, man, and we get past this COVID stuff, man, we definitely got to connect, brother.
Yeah,
we got to connect, man. Connect with families and so forth, man. And continue this journey.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Spears. I continue the great work you're doing and continue being inspiration in fitness.
Man, I want to thank everyone that came on and everyone that will be watching this. Thank you, man. And we'll talk soon, okay?
All right.
Okay.